Hideo Kojima's tactical espionage franchise has never offered the best stealth gameplay on the market, but the series has carved its own niche, with its eccentric James Bond-style villains and high-minded telenovela-level melodrama that requires an encyclopedia to keep track of across the series' 3-decade-long history. It's now time to bury Snake and friends and say goodbye. Kojima has left Konami, and Konami seems to be inching away from video games altogether by allowing key franchises to wither away. Metal Gear as we know it will continue no longer. There will never be a Gassy Snake, nor a Metal Gear Zilla. The Phantom Pain is not just the last piece in the big boss puzzle, it's a eulogy of sorts. The last hurrah for one of gaming's most beloved characters and the pretentious megalomaniac who created him.
V has come true.
Taking place after the massively padded $30 demo disc titled Ground Zeroes, The Phantom Pain opens with Big Boss laid up in a hospital missing a few bits and pieces. As is customary with Metal Gear Solid, the game takes its time showing players Big Boss's slow recovery and attempting to build intrigue before shit hits the fan when Cypher attempts to assassinate Big Boss. Fortunately, a mysterious patient steps in and helps Big Boss slip by a raging fire demon, a flaming whale, and a unicorn. No fucking joke. From there, it's a quest for vengeance as Big Boss attempts to rebuild Mother Base and kill Skullface. While the previous Metal Gear Solid games relied on long-winded codec calls and cutscenes, Metal Gear Solid 5 finally does away with those. Unfortunately, the cassette tapes that replace them still suffer from the same problem as the two aforementioned means of conveying information to players. They result in massive amounts of exposition being dumped onto players, breaking the flow of the game. These tapes provide encyclopedias worth of information about characters and events, but not all of that information is relevant or even necessary. In some cases, it feels like reading a bad fan fiction. Somehow, the whole thing comes together in a way that removes the best aspects of Metal Gear's storytelling, while many of the flaws remain. Snake is now almost a silent protagonist since most of the game's story is conveyed through tapes, and as a result, the acting chops of Kiefer Sutherland are largely squandered. The game's structure in itself is also problematic. Most of the time there isn't any kind of narrative thrust to the mission objectives. Generally, missions consist of rescuing hostages, eliminating high-value targets, or destroying equipment, and only after completing several of these banal missions does something occur that purposely moves the plot forward. When the plot does move forward, it heads straight toward Batshitville. The Phantom Pain is yet another game to make the leap to open-world gameplay, with each mission giving players a sizable chunk of land to navigate and complete mission objectives and side objectives in. Being able to move freely around these large environments makes a positive impression initially. Spotting your destination and plotting a course that gives you the upper hand is an enjoyable undertaking. Arguably, Metal Gear's greatest strength as a franchise has been in its attention to detail when it comes to player interaction, and in this regard, the Phantom Pain does not disappoint. There are a number of tools and vehicles at your disposal, and if you're creative enough, you can find interesting and sometimes hilarious ways to use them. The open world design only creates more opportunities to test the game's ability to react to players' actions. In order to shake things up a bit, Snake doesn't have to enter enemy territory alone. There are a handful of companions that can be brought along, each with a handful of unique abilities that grow as the bond between them and Snake strengthens. The potential for replayability and entertainment seems endless after your first few missions. Kojima and company have always gone to great lengths to determine what players will do and try to create a reaction in the game that makes experimentation satisfying. Whereas the linear design of previous Metal Gear games allowed the designers to anticipate what players would do and what tools they might find useful, the Phantom Pain's more open design means that a determined player can employ absurd and unorthodox tactics in almost any mission. AI is generally well suited to keep things interesting by actively countering any tactics that you overuse. Taking out your foes with frequent headshots result in enemies that wear helmets. Relying on the cover of darkness means that more enemies will appear at night. And those who like to beat up enemies with CQC may find their foes brandishing shotguns instead of assault rifles. This all seems like a welcome change, except that the open world environments in the Phantom Pain are kind of dull. Your foes occupy clusters of buildings and tents that are copied and pasted around the game world, and offer very little in terms of exploration. There are a few well-developed locations, but Snake will spend a majority of the time moving through sparse military checkpoints towards objectives and cut-and-paste camps. There's very little to see, and similar environments with more primitive themes like the one in Red Dead Redemption seem to teem with life, while the level of activity in Metal Gear Solid 5 is akin to that of a Kmart parking lot. Before long, taking the time to travel to your objective, scouting the area, and determining the next best course of action become tedious. To further add to the tedium, there are hidden objectives to each mission, which can be stumbled upon accidentally, alluded to by interrogated guards, or you can complete the primary objective and finish the mission to view the additional objectives. Completionists will have to play each mission several times in order to get everything. The repetition gets even worse as players draw near the game's conclusion, since players are required to complete remix versions of earlier missions since the game was obviously rushed out the door. The Phantom Pain reintroduces players to the concept of operating Mother Base. The base management mechanics that defined Peace Walker on the PSP have been expanded here. Players can physically walk around Mother Base to inspect new add-ons and expansions, interact with the recruits patrolling the premises, and get some R&R. Just like Peace Walker, Big Boss needs to capture enemies on the battlefield to staff the base. The people you capture and recruit can be placed in one of a few different roles depending on what their skills are. The more skilled your staff at Mother Base, the more weapons and items you can build and research, and the better defended your base will be. In addition to people, there are also supplies to capture. Plants can be harvested to make medical advancements, and metals and fuel generally aid with upgrades to your equipment and chopper. With the proper upgrades, vehicles and artillery emplacements can also be extracted from the battlefield. While making improvements to Mother Base can be a bit addicting, it starts to feel like padding over the course of the game. Having to take on side ops to get some of the best recruits from Mother Base, and taking the time to drag sleeping or knocked out bodies into the open where they can be Fulton back to Mother Base can be a drag on an already padded, repetitive experience. Much praise has been heaped on Konami's Fox engine and its ability to deliver excellent visuals. While running buttery smooth on the PS4 and aging PC hardware, the Xbox somewhat stutters. Much of this praise is well deserved, but trained eyes will notice really low poly counts and general reliance on simple geometry covered up with slick texture work. The end result is a game that looks great when not scrutinized, and is easy to run. On an aesthetic front, the Phantom Pain is rather dull. Character models are lovingly detailed. So lovingly, in fact, that the game stops to highlight the brand of sunglasses that its protagonists don in one of the most egregious bits of product placement to find its way in a video game. The soundtrack is solid, with pulse-pounding riffs that kick in once the action ramps up. A number of cassette tapes that look like a playlist for Now That's What I Call Music 1984 can be scooped off the battlefield to give older players a bit of a nostalgia trip as well. The Phantom Pain is an apt title for the 5th installment of Metal Gear Solid. Fanboys of the series may experience intense tingling or burning sensations upon firing up the next Metal Gear Solid title, knowing that the brainchild behind it all is gone. The Phantom Pain for me, however, is the sensation of knowing that one of the most innovative and revolutionary game titles from my childhood would wallow in backwards narrative design and suffer from the self-congratulatory overindulgence of its creator. The Phantom Pain is a lengthy opus that suffers from massive repetition and an absurd narrative that relays its themes to its audience with the subtlety and refinement of a Molly-fueled rave. The move to an open world has improved the gameplay, but the world design and mission design has let it down in equal measure. Nevertheless, legions of Kojima and Metal Gear fanboys will enjoy every second they spend with the Phantom Pain, while the rest of us scratch our heads and wonder what is so special about it.